ahead and start.
Hello everyone, how are you today?
Hi Kelsey.
Hi. So today we're going to be talking about irony and the 3 different forms of irony. So we're going to start with this video. I'm sure you guys have all seen SpongeBob.
Songs are really about big life moments. Baby shower.
It's gonna happen in front of you.
Ooh, I hope it's a life insurance policy.
What?
It's a sensible gift.
Tiny baby shoes.
Should have been a life insurance policy. Plus, would have been a great song. The lyrics, beneficiaries. Ooh, right.
Before we begin with the ribbon cutting, I'd like to announce the name of our new manager. Yes, well, anyway, the new manager is a loyal, hard-working employee.
Yes.
The obvious choice for the job.
Right.
A name you all know. It starts with an S.
That's me.
Please welcome our new manager, Squidward Tentacles.
Yeah! Yeah! Oh, better luck next time, Larry.
Before we begin, let's so what did you guys notice about that video? By the way, is everyone familiar with SpongeBob SquarePants? Like, have you guys watched it when you guys were kids? So let's jot a couple things down. What you guys notice?
Yell stuff out. They're promoting someone.
SpongeBob seemed really certain he was going to get it.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah. It's very exaggerated.
Sorry for my terrible handwriting.
Okay.
So as you guys were noticing possibly, this was a perfect example of irony. And then you guys are going to see why in like just a little bit, because we're going to learn all about irony. We're going to continue our discussions on figurative language and different figures of speech. And then we're going to be able to discern what type of irony this was. So I'm going to ask you guys all get out your writer's notebooks if you don't already have it out. And then please write down this definition for irony. So we have irony as being a figure of speech, which is a contradiction or incongruity between what is expected and what actually occurs. So what that basically means is what you thought was going to happen didn't happen. So there was some kind of divergence of expectations. So I do want to note for you guys that this is a generic definition for irony. It works a lot of the time, but not all of the time. Because irony is a very multifaceted figure of speech, so we can't really just use just one single definition to define irony, because there are 3 types that we're about to learn about. Situational irony, verbal irony, and dramatic irony. So I'll give you a couple seconds to write that down. And then also it's important to note that irony, you can find irony in all different kinds of mediums, whether it be literature, film, television shows, comics, or what have you. Okay, so the first type of irony that we're going to look at is situational irony. And this form of irony is probably the kind that is your go-to when you think of what irony is. So it involves a discrepancy between what is supposed to happen and what actually happens. So it occurs when the opposite of what you expect to happen happens. Something to keep in mind is for something to happen, for it to be situational irony, there has to be an element that leads a person to think that a particular event or situation is unlikely to happen. So you can't just think of like, you thought you were going to go to the park and then it started raining. Oh, that's ironic because it was raining. That's not really irony, that's just something bad that happened. So an example though is a weatherman reporting on location. He gets caught in a really bad storm, and that's ironic. Because you would expect a weatherman to know when there's going to be good weather, when it's safe to go outside and start reporting. So if he gets caught in a really bad storm and he wasn't expecting for that to happen, then that would be an example of situational irony. So we're going to look at a quick visual example, and then we're going to talk about it. you guys can just say.
Chic, glamorous, super cool, fabulous, multicolored awesomeness.
That was a cool song.
Okay, that was the freakiest thing I've ever.
Ow! Ow!
Alright. So can anyone tell me, like, how does that demonstrate situational irony?
You would have
Yes.
expected the Jaguars to wake up when the balloon popped, but they didn't, and then Cusco made his situation worse.
Right, exactly, Jesse. Perfect. Any other ideas? Okay, we can move on to the second form. Okay, verbal irony. So, but verbal irony, as you see, I mean, it is verbal. So it's through, this is the type of irony that deals most explicitly or most intimately with language itself and how we're using language. So it implies a different meaning to what is actually said. And there are two main types of irony. There's overstatement, which means something, a character or something is being exaggerated, or understatement. So it's the complete opposite. So it undermines the character of something. And so a lot of times people associate verbal irony and sarcasm as being interchangeable, but that's actually not the case. Sarcasm is actually just a form of verbal irony, because when you're being sarcastic, you're using verbal irony for harmful intentions. So to insult somebody or just to cause harm. So verbal irony, so sarcasm is always verbal irony, but it's not the reverse. So verbal irony is not always sarcasm. So you gotta be careful not to just say, okay, sarcasm, that's verbal irony. Or excuse me, the other way around, sorry. It's a little tricky. But an example is referring to a friend who's late to a party as the guest of honor. Because the guest of honor, that's a very positive thing, right? But here, obviously, if a person's late, that's not a good thing. So the person's kind of saying it, that is kind of sarcasm. He's trying to humiliate the person. So we're gonna look at another visual example. Actually, we're gonna listen to a song, excuse me. We're gonna listen to a song.
Just gonna stand there and watch me burn. That's alright because I like the way it hurts. Just gonna stand there and hear me cry. That's alright because I love the way you lie. I love the way you lie.
I can't tell you.
So that's a song that most of us probably have heard before, but maybe have never thought of it as being an example of verbal irony. So can anybody now tell me, like, how did that demonstrate verbal irony? Yes, Julia?
Well, given by like the first part of the phrase, like crying and like feeling like you're burning, that sounds like she doesn't appreciate lying
Right.
or hurting, like being emotionally painful in some way. But she says that's all right. I love the way you lie, but she obviously does it because
Right.
she's crying.
Exactly. Right, Julia. Sure. Anybody else? Okay.
Alright, so the third example of irony is dramatic irony, and I'm sure we're familiar with this because dramatic irony is when we, the audience or the reader, knows more than the characters inside that book or film know. So an example of this might be a character in a play unknowingly ingested poisoned food after the audience was previously informed this was going to happen. So it's when we know something's going to happen, but the character doesn't know it's going to happen, and then it happens. So it's dramatic irony. So we're going to watch a little film clip from Titanic, which I'm sure you can understand why.
Forgive me. I did the sum in my head.
And with the number of lifeboats times the capacity you mentioned, forgive me, but it seems that there are not enough for everyone aboard.
About half, actually. Rose, you miss nothing, do you? In fact, I put in these new type davits, which can take an extra row of boat inside this one. But it was thought by some that the deck would look too cluttered. So I was overruled.
A waste of deck space as it is in an unsinkable ship.
Sleep soundly, young Rose. I have built you a good ship, strong and true. She's all the lifeboat you need. Just keep heading aft. The next stop will be the engine room.
Okay, so can anybody tell me why that was dramatic irony? What do we know about the Titanic? They drowned. They drowned. So we knew before seeing this what was going to happen. There wasn't enough boats, and we knew the outcome in the end. But the character obviously did not.
Yeah. The director was expecting that all of his audience is familiar with the Titanic because, like, it's a universal, huge, tragic event that happened that we learn about in history books to this day. All of us probably, like, we know what happened during the Titanic. And this movie came out in 1997, so even back then, it was probably even more prevalent. Not that it was that long ago, but still. So again, that's a perfect example of dramatic irony because he's saying, oh, unsinkable ship, but as we know, it ends up sinking, right?
All right, so now we get to do some fun stuff. We will be doing a little skit activity, but before we have you do the activity, we're going to show you an example of a skit that we are going to perform that shows an example of irony.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Amazing.
Before we're about to show you an example. So how it's going to work is you guys are going to get into trios, groups of 3, and we're going to ask that you get with people that you don't normally sit with or maybe talk to that much in class so you can get to know everybody. And then we're going to randomly assign you a type of irony, and then you guys are going to come up with your own skit that includes this type of irony. We're going to pair you with another trio, and you guys are going to perform it with each other. And then each trio is going to make an educated guess as to what type of irony you guys are evincing.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So before we do that, before you get in your groups, we'll show you a skit that we made up.
Yeah, and then you guys will, hopefully you guys can guess what irony we're showing.
Okay. Get into actor mode. Stop killing animals! Stop exploiting animals! Stop killing animals!
Hey Stacy, I love your fur jacket.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, and that's it. So what was that? What kind of irony was that? Yes. Yup. Situational.
Why was it situational irony?
Because you would not expect an animal rights activist to wear a real fur coat.
Right, exactly.
Good. Perfect.
So get into groups.
Yeah.
We need 6 different groups, and then I'm gonna come around with a bag, and you're gonna pick a type of irony. Cool? Go make friends.
So.
16. So do we have 6 different groups? Yes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, can I get like a group of 2? Because we need a partner. We need a partner. Or like
So how about that 4, can you guys just break off into pairs? Is that okay?
She's recording.
Oh, right.
Oh, I could be in
Oh yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so we have 6 different groups. Okay. Make sure you're hiding. Do not show.
You gotta be really careful not to show.
Can I just say, wow, you guys, I'm really impressed how you went and worked with people you didn't know.
Right,
very
come on.
well.
Yeah.
What kind of irony was that?
Right, that's verbal.
Yeah, right?
Very good.
That was my skit.
Yeah. We'll let it slide this time, but in the future.
I did go to
Oh, I never knew that.
Okay, wait, who's my last group? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, guys, so you guys have about 5 minutes to get with your group.
You just like try to just go to different areas of the room to try to work. Go to different areas.
I don't know these people.
We could do that.
Okay, good. I like that.
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln and you would be the wife. You'd be like, I don't really want to play today. I've got a bad feeling. And then the wife would be like, you'll be fine. Isn't that the yeah?
Yeah, I know.
So that's an idea.
She said
Good, good. Okay, sure.
First thing I want to know is
We have a few more minutes. Is any group having like serious difficulty? Or no? Good.
We'll give you about like another minute.
To two?
About 30 more seconds.
All right, wrap up your ideas.
Alright guys, we're gonna divvy you up.
Alright! Okay, class, we're gonna bring it back together, okay? So I'm gonna tell you guys what group you're gonna present to, okay? So Jesse, your group is going to go with Mason's group over there. Okay, Grace, your group will go with Julia's group. And then Rachel, your group will go with Adriana's group over here. Okay? Did I miss anybody?
Write down your guesses. Don't tell the group what the guess is that you're giving. We'll come back as a class and we'll share that, okay?
Okay.
Amazing.
So yeah, you don't want to say it.
Hear and perform.
We will come back.
So just perform it, yeah, don't tell us. Yeah. 5 minutes, okay. Yeah. Hey class, really, so you need to perform. We're gonna make a quick little revision. perform your skit, okay? Perform your skit, and then after you guys are done, the other group is just guess what irony you think, and tell them if they're right or wrong, okay?
Okay.
All right, begin.
Alright, ready? Okay, so what was ours? Oh, y'all want to go first? Okay, ready?
Hey Mitchell, can you just take your speech for graduation since you was out?
Yeah, I just finished my last night.
Okay, well, it's too soon because I need to end it. Yeah, graduation next Friday, so. Alright, look at your test sheet, guys. You want to
Well, yeah, oh, got it.
Yeah.
Now, okay.
I probably
Got it.
should.
No, that's okay.
Yes.
You got it.
Okay. Everyone's gonna go away now.
I'm so kind of confused. Okay. Yeah, right. Oh man, this is a really good banana.
I was like, I have the group, and then I looked up and I was like,
Whoops.
That's not nice.
Do you do anything else?
Verbal, situational, or dramatic. Using dramatic because we know bananas are slippery.
No, I got it.
Nice.
Did you guys perform?
Yes.
Good. How did you guys were you guys able to easily guess what you're trying? You guys are both great. Good. What was your skit?
I was evaluating.
Is it
Good.
And that she's the one who's.
Alright guys, we'll give you about 30-ish more seconds to wrap up your thoughts. Sorry, we're on a time crunch.
All right, you guys can go back to your seats. Thank you. So is every group able to easily identify the other group's type of irony?
Yes.
Perfect. Good. I'm glad. So that means we all have a firm understanding of situational, verbal, and thank you.
So now we're going to be participating in a quick write, so get out your writer's journals. And we're going to be making some connections to our personal lives. I want you to think about the 3 forms of irony that we've just learned about, and I want you to pick a time in your life where you've experienced some form of irony. Maybe you watched something on TV, maybe it actually happened to your life, in your life. So pick a form, write it down, and write about it. Amazing.
A couple minutes.
Start wrapping up your thoughts. Right where you're at is exactly where you're supposed to be.
Right.
And then we're going to tell you a bit about your homework for tonight.
All right, so for homework tonight, I want you to go home and then find an example of each form of irony. Okay? And then in a couple of sentences, I want you to describe how does your example represent the form of irony, its form of irony. So just remember that you have a bounty of resources. Look in books, TV shows, comics, songs, as we saw. All these things have so many different types of irony, or so many different examples of the 3 forms of irony. And so bring that to class tomorrow, because you guys are going to need it. Thank you. Have a good day.